First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
And welcome back to Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nebler, live here out of the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom. We have seen the ramifications of the drought that is going on, just what that's had to do with wildfires and everything else that's happening here in the Pacific Northwest. There are other effects too when it comes to lack of water in our waterways, and one of those could be an outbreak of botulism for birds. This has happened before. We're going to find out a little bit more about what exactly this means, how this transpires, and what can be done about it. Joining us right now, we've got Teresa Wicks from the Oregon Bird Alliance. Thank you very much for being here to join us for this. And I think to start off, would you mind, letting us know about this? It's botulism. A lot of times, people may not think about it associated with animals, but certainly it is a huge concern. And I guess what are the big concerns that you have right now when it comes to that?
Yeah, first, thanks for having me today. You're right, that botulism isn't always something people think about being a wildlife-associated problem. There are a lot of different types of botulism. Avian botulism is the specific variety that affects birds. And so really specifically, it's an avian botulism outbreak that's happening at Tule Lake National Wildlife Refuge. And one of our big concerns is that this seems to be a trend of increasing botulism outbreaks happening over the last several years. So botulism is a natural part of the ecosystem. It's a bacterium that's found in the soil around the globe. And so small outbreaks are a fairly normal part of the Klamath Basin ecology, but outbreaks like we've seen since 2020 are not. And so before 2020, the largest outbreak was about 6,000 birds. In 2020, 60,000 birds died. In 2024, 140,000 birds died. And this year, we're already up to 11,000 plus dead birds at Tule Lake.
Wow, already 11,000 dead birds. And so these are just, you go out there and it's just documented these birds are, dying out there.
One of the main ways that the refuge, aside from water, being able to reflood the mudflats, one of the main ways that botulism is treated or mitigated on the refuges is staff go out and collect the dead birds.
So the dead birds can still be a source of that botulism? Okay.
Yeah, and the reason for that is essentially, we call it the fly life cycle. So essentially, if you have a bird that dies in a wetland, and if its carcass stays there, flies will lay eggs on it. And then when their larvae hatch, they're a super high protein source of food. And so other birds will eat those larvae, which then have the botulism in them as well. And so it can create kind of a snowball effect. Like I always think of the cartoon snowballs where they start small and they roll downhill and get really big. That's kind of how the botulism outbreaks, especially this time of year, when you have flies that are in the wetlands, that it kind of snowballs a little bit like those snowballs.
Yeah, one begets the next one, begets the next one, and just keeps on going. How, with that, 11,000 birds lost so far, what kind of an effect does that have on the ecosystem?
Yeah, so this year in particular, there are a lot of young birds that are dying. Historically, botulism outbreaks would have started later in the season, so your young birds would have started moving on or would be flighted. And so right now, it's a lot of this year's chicks, grebe and ducklings in particular, and then birds that are arriving to molt. And so they're also adult birds that are flightless, so not. The impact is kind of a double whammy, if you will. You've got young birds that are not going to make it into adulthood, and adult birds from the breeding population that are here to molt that are also dying. And so it can have, we've seen from previous large-scale outbreaks that it can have an impact on populations throughout the flyway. And most of the species that we have that are impacted by botulism here are declining throughout the flyway already. So it can have an exaggerated effect on those species when large numbers of them die in an outbreak.
You mentioned, collecting some of the dead birds to help try to mitigate that. But looking at this, barring a massive amount of rainfall to reflood these areas soon, which probably isn't going to happen, what are the ways to really mitigate some of the issues and concerns that are happening right now?
So a more consistent or more continuous supply of water, particularly in the long-term planning, if there's There are some community-generated proposals that would help essentially continuously flow water through the refuges. So botulism thrives in stagnant water. So stagnant water, warm temperatures, and shallow depths. So if you can keep the water moving, if you can keep it oxygenated, cooler temperatures, and if you can keep the soils the bacterium are in flooded, those are all some of the ways that botulism can be mitigated.
Is that something that humans can do or have the ability
Yes.
to do? Okay.
Yeah, and so there are some conversations happening in the basin for this year for a short-term solution to try to reflood the mud flats. There was conversations about trying to get water there sometime this week. We have not got notification of whether or not that has actually happened. But the long-term plans, like the flow-through concept proposed by Klamath Water Users Association and the Lower Klamath Reconnection concept, which would essentially create a live flow between the Klamath River and Lower Klamath National Wildlife Refuge, are two of the proposals that are coming from within the community that could potentially mitigate botulism in the, as part of a long-term plan.
Is there any kind of a concern that this botulism could spread beyond the Klamath Basin?
So the thing about botulism is that it essentially so if a bird ingests either vegetation or an insect that has the bacterium in it, it creates a toxin in their body that starts to paralyze them. So most birds that are impacted by botulism are just within a few days of being exposed to the toxin, start to experience symptoms of paralysis. So they'll look stumbly. So you can go to a wetland and sometimes see birds in the early stages of botulism. They have a hard time walking because the paralysis starts in their feet. And then eventually you'll see that they have a hard time flying or swimming. And then they typically, one of the very common ways that birds die of botulism is drowning, water birds in particular, because once they're on the water, and the paralysis sets in, they can't keep their head out of the water. And so most birds that are impacted by botulism because of the paralysis, they don't have the ability to fly very far. So I think the risk of it spreading outside of the basin is low.
Is there a risk of it spreading to humans through contact with birds that died of botulism?
So I think that, our classic understanding of botulism is that avian botulism primarily affects birds, but there have been documented cases of mammals getting sick from eating birds that have been infected with avian botulism. So I think that under our classic understanding of botulism, it is believed there's a low risk of people getting botulism from the birds, but based on some case studies on other mammals contracting botulism or appearing to contract botulism from eating birds, I would say that we probably can't say the risk is zero to people.
Okay, so stay away from them. I would imagine unless
Don't
you're
eat
a
'em.
professional. Yeah, don't eat them.
Fine.
Yeah, don't eat the dead bird that you found at the Klamath Basin.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, Teresa, anything else that you think is important for people to know?
Just I think that these continued botulism outbreaks, for me, are a sign of the system being out of balance, and the community working together to try to find ways to balance the system better for the benefit of fish and farmers and birds is really important. And I'm hopeful that the collaborative work that is happening in the basin right now is going to produce some positive long-term benefits for everyone.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us to explain this and walk everybody through it, to have an understanding of what's happening, what can be done to help mitigate some of this, as you mentioned, and just what the concern. Yeah, really, just really understanding what's going on. So thank you so much, Teresa. I really appreciate your time here.
Yeah, thank you.
And for everybody watching, this is Fox 12 Now. We need to get to a quick break, but we've got more coming up for you. We'll be here until our 4 p.m. news, so we've got another 15 minutes or so, and we'll talk to you just after this break with more Fox 12 Now.